Welcome to the Winning Family Podcast with Rodney Michelle Gage, a podcast designed to help you win at home and in life.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Winning Family, a podcast designed to help you win at home and in life. And I am joined by my amazing wife, Michelle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome.
And we are so honored that you have chosen to be a part of this podcast, whether you're watching it on YouTube or perhaps listening through the audio version of our podcast. It means the world to us that you're a part of our winning family, and we would love to encourage you just to share, to rate, review, pass on the word to friends and family, coworkers that might benefit from this content as well. And today we're talking about, I think, one topic that perhaps we hear more about than perhaps any other. It's the subject of conflict. So as a parent, if you are struggling with conflict with, and let me just say, a preteen or teen.
Did you say if?
Yeah, that's a big word.
Okay.
Big word. Because I know there are some perfect parents that might be listening to this.
That's right.
But for the other, 8 billion people on the planet, we all struggle with conflict when it comes to issues between us and our kids. And
maybe our marriage.
Yeah. But we're going to kind of lock in today on that preteen-teen relationship. And I think, rather than chasing the terrible two syndrome and all that stuff, I would rather focus today on this area of conflict that I know is an issue. And here's one of the main reasons why I think conflict is at the forefront of a lot of parent, teen, preteen relationships is because of one word. It's the word independence. Mm-hmm. So when kids reach that 12, 13, 11, 12, 13, really, as they're growing, they're developing physically, mentally, emotionally, in every realm, spiritually, morally, every aspect of their life is changing. And as kids become less dependent upon mom and dad, because now they're becoming more independent with where they're going, their friendships, things that they're doing when you're not around. And that might even be under your own roof. It might be in their home, in your home, in their bedroom, what they're watching, their video games, or, list goes on and on and on. But what happens is it's in that tug of war, it's in that struggle where that tension begins to manifest, because now all of a sudden, the independent nature of our kids expressing their perspective, their views, their opinions, basically doing what they want to do or what they don't want to do, all of a sudden can create a lot of combustion in the home and in the relationship. And I think it's very easy sometimes for parents to just maybe put down their foot and kind of clamp down a little harder and say, hey, if this is the way it's going to be, it's our way or the highway. It's kind of that drill sergeant approach sometimes, where maybe it's the extreme of you're going to play by our rules and that's it. Or sometimes we can take it to the other extreme and we just kind of take more of a passive approach. And now all of a sudden we feel maybe that we're being disrespected and taken advantage of and violated as parents.
Right.
So you have all these things going on.
Therapeutic approach that is, very popular right now is to, we're getting ready to talk through some ways to handle it, but I don't know. I think that there can be a very lenient approach too, as well. So we got to find that happy medium there, because we are raising our children not to keep them under our thumb, but to raise them up, to release them. So they're learning through conflict and how we handle conflict. They're learning how they're going to handle conflict for life. So
Absolutely.
It's really, really important that we have some sort of a structure that we have put in place in our mind. This is something really simple that you've put together, Rodney, that's super helpful to remember when you get into a conflict situation with your children. I said when, not if, because you will. Maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow. But this is a great structure to remember when it comes to handling conflict, because we want to teach them. We don't want to have to always have our thumb on our kids. We want to raise them up and release them to be healthy in dealing with conflict, because conflict will happen. It's going to happen no matter what career they choose, no matter what path they choose. They're going to have conflict in life, and it's super important that we're teaching them how to handle it.
Yes, and I'm super excited because this year we're going to be rolling out a new book called We Can Work It Out, and it's called Creative Conflict with Your Teen.
So
and
exciting.
So it's all about this whole issue of handling conflict in a creative way, in a life-giving way. And because at the end of the day, we can work it out. We can get on the same page. So that's what we want to help accomplish today. And I love what you just emphasized, Michelle, because I think it's so important. I love what Romans 12:2 says. It's kind of our theme verse, life verse in so many ways, but it says, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So in other words, we got to change the way we think when it comes to this whole issue of conflict, rather than conforming to what comes natural, because that's what we heard or what we saw our parents do in terms of how they rectified or how they handled conflict in their marriage, or maybe the way they treated you or talked to you or handled you when you were growing up. It's or what we see and hear on television or in all of the videos and stuff where there's so much dishonor and disrespect and sarcasm. And I mean, the world, it's unbelievable how much influence it does. The culture, the pop culture of our society, it has so much influence, not just on our kids, but even on us as parents. So
it's heartbreaking. It really is to see our culture where it's at right now, just with the anger and the frustration and the conflict that is celebrated in our world on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever video you're watching, or like you said, TV or the news. It is the custom of our culture.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the highlighted thing for you to get up on your soapbox and let it be known,
somebody,
So this is what this is the culture our kids are raised in. And behind closed doors, behind their bedroom door, they're on their phone and they are watching and being trained by this anger that is just prevalent in our culture.
So we have to allow God to ultimately transform our mind, our hearts, and really just our approach to how we handle this issue of conflict. And so,
because the most important voice right now in our kids' lives, we do think it's maybe what they're hearing on TV or through their phone or their friends, but still, if your kids are under your roof, really, you still have the most important voice in their life right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, what we want to do is just give you something very simple. And again, it's more of a framework that you can utilize. And I really encourage you to write this down. I would encourage you just to reflect on this a little bit just before you have that conversation with your son or your daughter, before you confront them about things that need to be confronted. And especially if you find yourself in the heat of the moment, because that's when we're in reactive mode, when we go into an argument without a plan, when we go in unprepared, then we end up saying things we wish we wouldn't have said, or doing things we wish we wouldn't have done. And all of a sudden we have that regret, and then we feel guilt. And, but once it's said, we can't take it back. And once it's done, we can't undo it. And that's why it's so important that we really be calculated, that we are very composed, that again, we're under the control of the Holy Spirit, so that we are building bridges between us and our kids. At the end of the day, we've got to keep our kids' hearts open and soft, because it's not about rules. It is not about it's our way or the highway. While you're under our roof, you're doing it this way. The moment we take on that kind of an approach, all we're doing is we are hardening the heart of our children. And at the end of the day, it is not about rules. It is about a relationship. One of our dear friends and mentor, Josh McDowell, he used to say it this way: rules without a relationship only lead to rebellion. But a relationship along with rules, guidelines, boundaries, all over time will build respect. So, and we have to model and live out what we say. We can't just preach it. We got to live it. So that is what's going to speak louder than any word when it comes to us modeling this message in terms of how we handle conflict. So our kids,
how you said over time, because it's that consistency over time that makes a difference.
Absolutely. Because the only reason why in for couples, for example, they may argue the way they argue and fight the way they fight when it comes to the things they say to each other or how they handle conflict, is probably just because they're in default mode of what they saw their parents do and how they handled. It's either fight or flight. It's one of the two. And I think the same can be true even in the parent-teen relationship or preteen relationship, 100%. Where it's that fight or flight. And again, all of that just hardens the heart. So we want to build bridges. We want to build relationship. We want to do anything and everything we can to keep harmony in the home and make sure the relationship wins. We're not compromising. We are making sure that the relationship wins. We want to build homes of honor, and that really just comes through keeping that relationship high.
That's right. And I think it is thinking about it, stopping and not just coming out of a response mode, but just because and you're listening to this podcast right now, you're thinking about it right now. And I think all of us have sent the text that we wish we could take back, that we didn't think it all the way through. We didn't stop and think about how we're going to handle the situation, maybe pray. So let's talk it through.
Yeah, don't blow up your kid's phone in the middle of school with all capital letters, You just wait till you get home.
Oh boy.
So let's kind of get real practical here. So I like the word handle, because how do you handle conflict? And is there a handle you can kind of hang on to hold to when it comes to doing it in the right way that's life-giving? So I love acronyms. They're just helpful. But anyway, some people think they're cheesy, but that's okay. So let me just say this. I just really, if I could summarize it in one word or one phrase or statement, let me just say it this way. I believe this with all of my being. And I say this out of 30 plus years of marriage, 30 plus years of doing ministry, raising your own kids, working with so many families over the years.
And you've spoken to millions of
over
kids.
Over 2 million kids. So here's what I know to be true. And let me just make sure I get this statement right. And I believe this. All conflict or all conflicts are the result of unrealistic, uncommunicated, unmet, or unfulfilled expectations.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just there are certain expectations that we have, and all of a sudden when those unrealistic or unmet expectations are unrealized or needs are not being met or whatever the situation is, then what happens? There's conflict. And so somebody's hurt, somebody feels disrespected, someone feels ignored, someone feels, betrayed, whatever, fill in the blank in terms of that feeling, that emotion you have. Well, again, that's either going to cause you to fight or it's going to cause you to withdraw, flight. And neither one is healthy. So here's what I want to encourage you to do. James 4:1 says it this way. Where do you think all these appalling wars and quarrels come from, James says? Do you think they just happen? Think again. They come about because you want your own way and fight for it deep inside yourselves. So at the end of the day, I want what I want, you want what you want, and it really comes down to, okay, who's going to get what they want? Who's going to win? And it's not a matter of who gets what they want. It ultimately is, what is the God-honoring thing for us to accomplish? How can God get glory in how we handle and rectify this argument or this disagreement or this difference of opinion or perspective? So rather than just, go at it and spin your wheels going nowhere,
getting louder and louder.
Getting louder and louder. And again, having a lot of regret along the way.
Right.
Let me give you some things that I think will be helpful, once again, just to kind of serve as a guideline in the midst of the emotions that are running high. And the H stands for hold your temper. And again, I know that's easier said than done because our kids, they know how to push our buttons. I mean, it is maybe that rolling of the eyes, or it's that, they're totally ignoring what we're saying or what we're asking them to do. It could be potentially just, just something incredibly disrespectful that they say that's even hurtful. And it's very easy to react and just go off, and just unleash, whatever comes to mind. And all of a sudden, we're allowing anger to get the best of us. So we have to hold our temper. I love what Proverbs 29, verse 11 says. It says, a fool expresses all his emotions, but notice, a wise person controls them. So it's easy for kids just to vent, but we as parents, we've got to model this by example and use wisdom in just maintaining our composure and staying in control of the situation rather than just flying off at the handle. So we have to hold our temper rather than allowing the volume level to really accomplish nothing other than the fact that we are only, once again, creating a wedge rather than building a bridge.
I love what our friends, the Thomases, said at our marriage retreat that we had, the Love Lock retreat. They said that you got to do the Texas two-step. You remember that? I love that.
Oh, yeah. That was awesome.
So that's slow to speak.
Slow to become angry.
Slow to become
quick to listen.
Quick to listen. That's right. Quick to listen. Slow to speak. Slow to become angry.
Yeah.
So the slow to speak, slow to become angry. And then you take that next step.
Yeah.
The Texas two-step. I love that.
That is. That's the key. Which leads us to the next step there. The letter A stands for admit your anger.
Yeah.
So I love that because, again, it's that be quick to listen, slow to get angry. And in anger, what you got to realize, anger is a real emotion, and it's a natural, normal emotion. Getting angry is not sinful. So don't think that, oh no, I'm sinning against God because I got angry. Well, Jesus got angry. It's do not sin in your anger. So it's what do you do with that anger? Are you saying things that are destructive? Are you saying things that are, again, things that we will ultimately regret? It's like fire. It's destructive, and it spreads and it destroys. And so, again, anger is so. It's just. I hate to use the word violent, but it can turn into violence if we're not careful,
So
because it rages. That's what anger does. It's what fire does. It says it this way in Ephesians 4, verses 26 and 27. And don't sin by letting anger control you. And I love this. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. Right. So the moment we allow anger to take control, all of a sudden we have just opened the floodgates for the evil one to come in and wreak havoc. I love what our former mentor, the late, great Gary Smalley said. He said, always keep honor high and anger low. And if we can just practice that, that's a game changer in and of itself. Keep honor high and anger low.
Right.
So we got to make sure we hold our temper, that we admit our anger. And let me just give you some examples of what I mean by that. So let's just say your son or your daughter did something or said something that was, again, maybe it was against your values as a family. Maybe it was just spiritually, morally wrong what they did. Maybe they said something or did something that was extremely hurtful, disrespectful. Well, you don't you don't dismiss the fact that it hurt you. It hurt you. And not only did it hurt you, but it naturally caused you to grow angry. But it's also important that you admit your anger to them by simply, instead of yelling at them, it's more of, I want you to understand that what you said, and not just what you said, but it was also the way you said it, was very, very hurtful. And it caused me to feel this way. Well, what you're doing now is you're helping them understand the why behind the what, but you're also opening up your heart and letting them into your world so that they understand that you're not just mom or you're not just dad, but you love them. And it hurt you that they said what they said, or that they didn't do what that they promised that they would do. It violated the trust, or whatever the situation or circumstances might be. But it's admitting your anger rather than just pushing it under the rug or pretending it didn't exist, or it didn't hurt, or no big deal, or whatever. Because, anger over time will manifest itself into resentment. And then resentment will ultimately turn to bitterness if it's left unchecked.
So how would you, you think that through, because some situations you have to deal with immediately. And I think in our culture, I think in our world, just the way that things move so fast, you want to deal with things really quickly. But sometimes you need to take a minute, take a breath. And take a time out for yourself as a parent. Maybe you need to go shut yourself in your room for a second and, hey, get yourself together and think it through. What is my next step? Maybe I was angry and I've got to take a second, take a breather. Hey, I need to step away from this situation for a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back to it, because we feel like we got to deal, at least I'm that way. I feel like I got to deal with things right then, right there. I got to get this dealt with, I got to bring closure to something. That's just my personality. I got to finish this. And that can cause more anger. Yeah. More anger can come out if you're trying to deal with something and it's not getting where you're needing it to go. So sometimes you got to take a minute and step back. Don't let the devil have that foothold, because boy, once he gets it, you get to going, then man, he can get that door open quick, and you are going to sin in your anger, But like you said, anger is not a sin in itself. It's an emotion. So we got to sit back, take a second, think about what you're going to say next before you say it. Because like you said, once it's said, and you can't take it back. Once that text is sent, it's sent. And maybe you can take them back now, but most of the time people see it before you take it back. So it's so important that we take a minute to breathe and think it through. Yeah. How we're dealing with our kids, because they remember. They remember.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
In your moments of conversation, especially when you're confronting.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure you pick the right time.
That's good.
And any time that you do find your volume level getting louder, or the veins start bulging out the side of the neck, it's time to take a chill pill for a moment. Yeah. Step away. Say, hey, we're both getting we're both getting overheated. We're both not at a good place. Let's take 10 minutes. Let's think about what we need to talk about. Let's gain our composure, and let's sit down and let's talk through this. Because again, you don't want to have any regrets. And if we're going to win the day when it comes to glorifying God at the end of it all, then we have to handle it the right way. And so just making sure the anger issue is in check. So admitting that you're angry, hey, let's take 10 minutes, let's cool down, let's gain our composure, and let's talk through this. And I think you'll find in the process, that it will be a game changer on so many different levels to help you, when it comes to just resolving the conflict in the right way. The other thing would be just what I call the N, which is no judgment allowed. So what I mean by that is, I think sometimes in our quick to judge world, social media, everybody is now, oh my goodness, it's just gotten crazy. So what happens is that we just all automatically rush to conclusion that, oh, she, this is so much like her, she or he is this or he is that, or, and all of a sudden we are already assuming that someone is guilty, especially maybe based on a track record or an association because they were hanging out with this guy or hanging out with that girl, and all of a sudden, I knew it, I should have known, and all of a sudden we've already filled in the blank because they were caught hanging out with this guy or this girl, and we in our mind think that this guy or this girl has a certain reputation that we don't want our son or our daughter being exposed to, and so just they're guilty by association, so to speak. And so rather than, again, being quick to judge, quick to blame, quick to point our finger, condemn, we just need to make sure that we get all the facts.
It's easy to write our own story.
Absolutely.
Without getting all the facts ahead of time. It's so easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to just go ahead and finish the story before you've even heard the facts at all.
Which leads to the next one, which is the D, and that's deal with the facts. So rather than, again, rushing to judgment, let's get the facts out on the table. And I think it's important that we allow our children to, first of all, tell us their version of the story. Let's let them have a voice. Let's hear them out. Maybe what we do is we maybe talk to the coach. Maybe we talk to the teacher. Maybe we talk to the other parents, making sure the story lines up, making sure that, which we're going to do another episode on lying.
Or with the brothers and the sisters, because there's conflict.
There's always a witness somewhere. Somebody heard something, somebody saw something, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's crucial that, again, we deal with the facts and don't go historical on them. You mean hysterical? No, historical. Don't bring up the past. Don't say, well, you did this. I remember.
You always.
Yeah, you always. Or this is, whatever. Here's the thing. We have to make sure that we are speaking with wisdom, that we are speaking with facts, and we better make sure that we've done our homework, that we bring the facts to the table too. Because at the end of the day, truth will prevail. And so we got to speak the truth in love, and hidden things will be revealed. And our kids have got to also learn that their sin will find them out one way or the other. Well, again, we're going to talk about this in another episode because this is huge. But at the end of the day, we have to deal with the facts. It's so vitally important. Just learn to speak the truth in love, with the spirit of love is so important. And then the L stands for listen. So it's not only listening with our ears. Bible says be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. But it's also listening with our hearts, listening with our eyes. It's all the nonverbal things sometimes that kids communicate. So we're listening. In my book called Why Your Kids Do What They Do, I outline 9 specific ways that you can listen to your kids. And I encourage you to get a copy of that book. It is one that I think every parent needs to hear and understand and learn more about when it comes to the 5 unspoken needs of our kids and what happens when those needs go unmet, because ultimately it drives the behavior, the choices they make. So all that to say, learn to listen with your heart, listen to what's going on in their world. Try to see from their perspective, hear from their perspective, feel from their perspective. Listen, because it will do so much to the relationship. Yeah,
that's such a great point, because we are so focused on the goals in life, the end result, whatever, work responsibilities we have, or the kids' academic responsibilities, or the goals that we have for them athletically, whatever it is. Are we in life? Are we just listening always? Do we always kind of have that perked up ear where we're always listening? Are we too busy where we can't listen? I guess is what I'm getting at. It's just important that we kind of have an assessment before we get into the conflict, that we have a perspective of where they're at already, so that we can listen even with greater intention, because we're putting it in perspective of where we know they are already at.
Yeah.
It's just important that we're always listening, not just in the conflict, but outside the conflict too.
Yeah. And how we build those bridges is that, hey, I can see things from your perspective.
Yeah, that's good.
I understand where you're coming from, and I can understand that you would feel the way that you feel. But on the flip side of that, they also are seeing things from your perspective and feeling what you're feeling, and that's how you work it out. That's how you win in the relationship. That's how you keep that bridge built and keep hearts softened.
That's good.
By just listening. Listening is so important to resolving conflict. And then the last thing is evaluate. That's the E in the word handle, is evaluate. So when it comes to evaluating, it's learning, it's growing, it's taking a step back and say, what could we have done to prevent the argument that we just had? What could we have done differently? What is going to help me learn more about where you're coming from, or learn more about the perspective you have? And is there anything that I did or anything that I said that was wrong? Is there any impure motive that I had? And so that's why Psalm 139 is so important. Where King David, he went before God and he just simply confessed and asked God, create in me a clean heart, examine my heart. Tell me, is there anything in my life? And it's important that we open up our hearts and ask that question to our kids. Say, is there anything that mom or dad could have done differently? And I think what happens is, again, rather than allowing pride, the Bible says pride comes before a fall, but the Bible says we're to humble ourselves before God's mighty hand, to resist. God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So it takes humility. It's that balance as parents of love and respect. It's the love and the limits. We have to establish our parental authority, but not exert that parental authority where we're holding it over our kids, but it is also balancing that authority with the limits, the accountability, but at the same time, we're doing it gracefully with a spirit of love that keeps, again, our children's hearts open. Because we're at a stage in our lives where we got 3 adult kids, 1 grandbaby already here, another on the way is at the time of the recording of this podcast. And you know what? We are having the time of our lives, because now we're at a place and a stage and a season in our lives where we're best friends with our kids. And that means the world. We'd rather be with one another than anybody else on the planet. And we've worked hard to keep those relationships to where we look forward to being together. And we love one another, and it hasn't always been easy. It's been messy. And we've had many, many moments through the years where a lot of tears and, a lot of arguments and a lot of family powwows. We had to sit down and you and I had to be referees in the middle of World War III and between our kids. But hey, conflict is inevitable. It's not a matter of if, like we were talking about earlier. It's a matter of when. And then ultimately, how do we handle that conflict?
I love it. I think when just processing all of this, talking about conflict, aren't we thankful for our Heavenly Father?
Oh my gosh.
We have our earthly fathers.
Amen
and
to that.
The way that we handle conflict, mothers here on earth, but so thankful for our Heavenly Father and the way that he has handled the conflict with us. And he sets the example for us.
Right. That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us, the Winning Family Podcast.
That's right. Well, this is a podcast that ultimately is designed to help you win at home and in life. And again, rate, review, pass the word. Let us hear from you. And we'd love to know how we can pray with you, pray for your kids. We actually have a website called prayformykids.com. prayformykids.com. It's just a simple website that allows you to fill out a prayer request. So we'd love to stand with you in prayer, pray over specific things related to you as a parent, grandparent, and let's stand together and support, encourage one another in these difficult days. But we love you guys. Can't wait to be with you again in our next episode of The Winning Family.